What if the stories we trust are not true? History is filled with grand lies, told so well that whole nations believed. Tonight, we look at them in the soft light of night. Are you ready to step inside? Lies are heavy, heavier than stone walls. They guide wars, crown kings, and change destinies. Yet people accept them, whisper them, build their lives upon them. This is not only about history, it is about us. Some lies hide in silence. They live for centuries, disguised as sacred truths. Legends, myths, and records carry them forward. The truth waits in the shadows, whispering to be found. If you love uncovering secrets, subscribe and walk with us deeper. For tonight, we open a hidden door. Behind it waits the first great lie, the horse that was never just a gift. The story begins in Troy, a city strong and proud. For 10 long years, the Greeks could not break its walls. The Trojans, weary but hopeful, thought the war might end. Then, one morning, they found a strange sight. A huge wooden horse stood quietly before their gates. It seemed lifeless, only wood and nails. But to them, it was a sign, a gift, a peace offering, perhaps even a sacred symbol. The war was over, they thought, and the gods had spoken. But truth hides in shadows. The horse was hollow, and inside it, men waited in silence. The gift was not peace, but a trap. History tells us that the Trojans celebrated, dragging the horse into their city. Music filled the night, and joy filled their hearts. Yet the lie stood at the center of their square, tall, silent, watching. It is a story told again and again, a warning wrapped in wood. The Trojans welcomed the horse inside their walls. They danced, sang, and poured wine, believing victory was theirs. Children touched the wooden surface, whispering that the gods had sent it. Elders nodded with trust. Soldiers laid down their arms. The city glowed with firelight and laughter. For a moment, the long nightmare of war had ended, all because of one simple belief, that the gift was real. Belief is powerful. It can heal, inspire, and guide. But it can also blind. The Trojans saw what they wished to see: peace, safety, the end of fear. The truth, hidden inside the horse, waited. In that night of celebration, the greatest danger was not outside the walls. It had already entered, carried by their own hands. Lies, once believed, become stronger than stone. As the city slept, shadows moved inside the wooden horse. Greek soldiers held their breath, waiting. Their hearts beat against the wood, but no one outside heard. When midnight came, a hidden door opened. The men stepped down into the silent streets of Troy. The city that had celebrated only hours ago now lay still, unguarded, asleep in dreams of peace. They lit small flames to guide their way, unlocking gates, calling their army waiting beyond the walls. Troy, proud and strong, had been undone not by swords, but by a lie. The horse was no gift. It was betrayal made solid, a false hope turned to ash. And so the story lived on, told across centuries, not just as a tale of war, but as a lesson. The most dangerous enemy is the lie we choose to believe. Flames rose into the night sky, painting the walls of Troy in orange and black. The Greeks poured through the open gates, their swords flashing in torchlight. The proud city that had stood for 10 years could not stand for one night against a lie. Temples burned, streets echoed with cries, and the wooden horse, now empty, stood like a ghost in the square. It was not the blade, but the belief that had doomed them. History remembers the fall of Troy with both awe and sorrow. For centuries, poets and singers told the tale of the horse, not only as a story of war, but as a warning to all who would listen. The Trojans had trusted what they wished to believe. They had opened their gates not to peace, but to ruin. And so the horse became more than wood and nails. It became a symbol of the cost of deception, of the danger of blind faith. The story of the Trojan horse is more than myth. It is a mirror of us. Even today, we face gifts that hide secrets, promises that are not true, voices that seek to mislead. Lies are not only in books of the past, they walk beside us now. And, just like Troy, we must learn to see beyond the surface, to question what is placed before our gates. The horse was only the beginning. Across the centuries, many more lies would shape kingdoms and faiths. Some were written on ancient parchment, others spoken in golden halls. The next great lie comes from the Middle Ages, a document said to give the church divine power, but it was only ink, forged by human hands. In the Middle Ages, a document appeared that changed the world. It was said to be written by Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor of Rome. According to this parchment, Constantine had given the Pope vast lands, wealth, and authority over kings. It was more than a gift. It was the foundation of the Church's earthly power. To many, it seemed divine. The word of a holy emperor could not be questioned, but the truth was hidden. This parchment, written in elegant Latin, was not from Constantine's time. It was made centuries later. Still, it gave the church strength. Kings bowed, rulers hesitated, and crowns trembled. A single piece of writing held more weight than armies. The donation of Constantine was believed for hundreds of years. A lie, written in ink, yet powerful enough to shape nations. For centuries, the donation gave the Pope power greater than kings. When rulers questioned, priests pointed to the parchment. It said Rome itself had bowed to the Church. Who could argue against that? In golden halls, the words of the document echoed like thunder. Castles, lands, and armies came under the Church's command. Few dared to doubt. To question the document was to question God. The people believed because belief was safer than doubt. In stained glass cathedrals, voices rose in prayer, while in the shadows, whispers of unease grew. Could it truly be real? Still, the lie worked. Crowns bent low, and kingdoms moved at the wave of a hand. The donation of Constantine was more than false history. It was a weapon forged of trust, wielded not by warriors, but by scribes. Not all believed. Quiet voices began to ask questions. Scholars studied the words, the style of writing, the details of history. Something felt wrong. The Latin was too new, the handwriting too strange for Constantine's age. But these doubts were dangerous. To speak them openly risked punishment, even death. So, for centuries, suspicion lived in silence. The lie continued to rule. And yet, truth waits. In hidden studies, monks compared old texts, searching for cracks in the story. Little by little, they began to see the truth. The donation was not from Constantine. It was a clever trick, a shadow dressed in light. But exposing it would take time, courage, and a world ready to listen. For now, the forged crown remained heavy, and the Church's power stood unshaken. For hundreds of years, the donation of Constantine ruled like an invisible king. It shaped laws, guided armies, and silenced rulers. Castles rose and wars were fought under its shadow. Priests held it high, as if the parchment itself were a holy relic. To question it was to risk not only power but also faith. The lie was not hidden in secret caves. It was shown in daylight, and still it was believed. The power of a lie is not in its words alone. It is in the trust of those who accept it. The donation became stronger with every generation that obeyed. Its ink gave popes crowns, and its letters built empires. Yet all the while, the truth slept beneath the weight of centuries. A few scholars whispered doubts, but their voices were soft, while the echo of the false document thundered across Europe. At last, centuries later, the veil began to tear. Renaissance scholars studied the parchment more closely. They saw its language was too new, its claims too perfect, its history too fragile. It was a forgery, not a gift from Constantine. The truth arrived slowly, but once spoken, it spread like fire. The donation of Constantine was not divine. It was deception. This revelation shook Europe. If such a powerful document was false, what else could be questioned? The lie had ruled for ages, but truth had finally pierced the mask. The parchment that once commanded kings became only paper. The world would never look at it the same way again. And so, with the horse of Troy behind us and the forged crown exposed, we turn our eyes to the sky, to a lie that placed Earth at the center of the universe. Long ago, people looked at the sky and believed Earth was the heart of all things. The sun, the moon, and the stars seemed to move around us. To ancient eyes, it felt natural. The earth was still, steady, unmoving, while the heavens turned above. Great thinkers like Aristotle and Ptolemy gave voice to this belief. They drew maps of the cosmos, circles upon circles, all revolving around our small planet. This view was more than science. It was comfort. To believe Earth was the center was to believe humanity was chosen, special, at the very center of God's design. Cathedrals echoed with sermons that confirmed this truth. Kings and priests agreed, and the people accepted. The lie was not born from malice, but from longing, a longing for importance in the endless sky. And so, for centuries, Earth stood still in the minds of men. Every night, the stars rose in the east and set in the west. To the people, this was proof. They saw the heavens move, while the ground beneath their feet stayed still. The lie grew not from trickery, but from what the eye could see. Even the movements of planets looping strangely in the sky were explained by circles upon circles in the great design. Ptolemy's model was complex, but it worked, or so it seemed. Temples and scholars repeated the belief for centuries. The earth was the throne of humanity, and all else bowed to it. Yet beneath this certainty, quiet questions stirred. Some wondered why the heavens needed so many circles, so many adjustments to keep the lie alive. But questions were often drowned out by power. For in this cosmic lie, kings found order, priests found authority, and people found meaning. And so the earth remained at the center. in faith, if not in truth. Not everyone was silent. In whispers and secret writings, a few dared to imagine a different sky. They noticed the strange paths of planets could not be explained by endless circles. They wondered, what if the Earth was not the center? Yet such thoughts were dangerous. To challenge the model was to challenge the Church, and to challenge the Church was to invite punishment. Still, brave minds began to stir. Seeds of doubt were planted in hidden studies, in quiet conversations, in books that risked burning. The lie had ruled for centuries, but truth was rising slowly, like dawn breaking through the night. The first cracks had formed in the perfect circle, and though the world did not yet know, a revolution was waiting in the stars. As centuries passed, new voices rose against the old circle. Astronomers began to see patterns the lie could not explain. Copernicus, quiet and careful, placed the sun in the center. It was dangerous knowledge, but it made sense of the skies. The heavens no longer danced awkward circles. They moved with grace and order. Yet even as truth grew stronger, the guardians of the old lie resisted. The Church feared the loss of certainty. If Earth was not the center, then humanity was not the chosen heart of creation. Sermons thundered that the sun revolved around us. To doubt was heresy. Yet doubt spread anyway, carried by books, whispers, and the courage of those who studied the stars. The cosmic lie began to crack, and with it, the hold of fear. Truth was near, though still hidden in shadows. The lie had ruled for centuries, but now the stars told another story. Copernicus wrote it quietly. Galileo dared to test it with his telescope, and though they faced anger and trial, their courage broke the circle. The Earth was not the center. It was a planet, moving like all the rest. The universe was larger, stranger, and more beautiful than the old lie had allowed. If you are enjoying this journey through the hidden truths of history, tap the like button. It helps us share these mysteries with more dreamers like you. And now, let us turn from the skies to the earth once more. For even in modern times, a different lie would echo through every classroom. A story told about walls so vast they were said to be seen from space. The Great Wall of China stretches across mountains and deserts, winding like a dragon of stone. For centuries, it was said to be one of the greatest works ever made by human hands. Stories described it as so vast, so mighty, that it could be seen even from the heavens above. This tale spread far and wide, whispered with pride, repeated in books and classrooms. People loved the idea. A wall built by human labor, visible from the stars. But myths often travel faster than truth. The wall was massive, yes, but not in the way the story claimed. From the ground, it looked endless. From mountaintops, it seemed to stretch forever. But from the sky, the truth was different. The stones blended with the earth, their colors fading into hills and valleys. The myth of a wall visible from space was beautiful, but it was a lie. The myth did not begin in space. It began in stories told by travelers and writers who wanted to honor the greatness of China's wall. For them, the truth was not enough. To say the wall stretched for thousands of miles was already impressive. But to say it could be seen from the stars gave it mystery and glory. Pride turned truth into legend. Soon, the story was repeated so often that it became fact in the minds of many. Even in modern times, when astronauts first began to orbit Earth, people still believed the wall would greet them from above. Teachers told children that the Great Wall was the only man-made structure visible from space. It was a romantic image, humanity leaving Earth, but still able to look down and see the mark of its own labor. Yet, the lie remained. Space did not reveal the wall. It revealed only the truth. When astronauts first looked down at Earth, they saw blue oceans, green forests, and golden deserts. But they did not see the wall. Even from low orbit, the stones of the Great Wall blended with the Earth around them. Rivers and mountains could be seen. Cities glowed with light at night. But the wall remained invisible. The myth that had lived for centuries fell silent in the face of truth. Some astronauts even spoke about it. They explained that the wall was not visible without help, without cameras and special lenses. The dream of seeing it with the naked eye was gone. Yet, even after these words, the myth refused to die. People still told the story, perhaps because it was too beautiful to let go. The Great Wall was no less great, no less powerful, but its legend had carried a lie across the stars. Science brought clarity where myth had lived. Astronauts confirmed that, without special tools, the wall could not be seen from orbit. It was simply too narrow, its colors too close to the Earth it rested on. From space, wide rivers and shining cities were visible, but the Great Wall disappeared into the land itself. The truth was not an insult, but a reminder. Even the greatest of human works can vanish in the vastness of the world. Yet the myth endured. People repeated it in classrooms, in travel books, and even in speeches. To many, the story was too beautiful to abandon. The wall symbolized human strength, unity, and will. Perhaps that is why the lie was stronger than the truth. A myth can carry pride and wonder, even if it is false. And so the Great Wall lived as both reality and legend. Stone on the earth, but dream in the stars. The Great Wall was never truly visible from space, yet its legend reached beyond the stars. It shows how lies, even harmless ones, can travel further than facts. They are repeated, cherished, and carried through generations until they feel as real as stone itself. This is the power of belief and the fragility of truth. But the wall is only one story. History is filled with others, lies born from rivalry, politics, and misunderstanding. The next tale takes us to Europe once more, to a man whose image became legend. They said he was small, almost childlike, mocked as the little emperor. But was Napoleon truly short, or was it another lie that everyone just believed? Napoleon Bonaparte rose from soldier to emperor, his name echoing through Europe like thunder. He led armies across battlefields, reshaped nations, and carved his place into history. Yet, alongside his victories, another story began to grow. People whispered that Napoleon was small, almost childlike in size. The image of a tiny man commanding great armies became part of his legend. But was this true? Records from his time show something different. Napoleon was measured in French units, which were longer than English inches. When translated, the numbers made him appear shorter than he really was. In truth, Napoleon was close to average height for his age. Yet the myth of the little emperor was too good to resist. It gave his enemies a weapon not of steel, but of words. Propaganda is a weapon as sharp as any blade. The British, Napoleon's greatest rivals, used cartoons and drawings to shrink him in the eyes of the world. Posters showed him as tiny, barely reaching the knees of kings, yet still trying to rule. People laughed, and laughter became a form of war. By mocking his size, they mocked his ambition, turning strength into ridicule. The truth mattered little. What mattered was the story. A small man trying to control Europe became a symbol, repeated in taverns, papers, and streets. Even after Napoleon's downfall, the image lived on. The world remembered him not as average in height, but as small, almost comically so. Lies have power not because they are true, but because they are repeated. In truth, Napoleon stood around 5 feet 6 or 7 inches in modern terms. This was average for a man of his time. He was neither tall nor short, but ordinary in stature. His guards, however, were tall and imposing, which may have made him look smaller when standing among them. The illusion was enough to spark rumors that spread quickly, feeding the lie. History often prefers myths to facts. The image of a short emperor commanding vast armies was too striking to forget. And so, the truth faded, replaced by the legend. Even today, people speak of Napoleon's complex, a phrase born from a lie. It shows how easily false stories take root, living longer than the man himself. Lies, once believed, can outgrow truth. After Napoleon's fall, his enemies had no need for swords or battles. They had the myth. Writers, artists, and historians repeated the story of a man small in body, but big in ambition. The image of the tiny emperor was painted into books, carved into memory, and told across Europe. Children grew up hearing the tale not of Napoleon's victories, but of his height. The lie became part of his shadow, following him long after his death. This is how lies grow. Once planted, they are watered by repetition. A single cartoon becomes a dozen become 100, until truth is buried beneath layers of laughter. Napoleon the man was complex, brilliant, and flawed. But Napoleon the myth was small, almost comic. And so the story endured, not because it was true, but because it was easy to tell. Today, most people still believe Napoleon was short. The phrase Napoleon complex is spoken without question, as if history itself declared it. Yet behind the myth lies the truth. He was ordinary in height, but extraordinary in ambition. His story shows how powerful lies can be. They reshape memory, they change how we see the past, and they linger even when the facts are known. And so, the small emperor lives on not in truth, but in legend. One man's body became a symbol, stretched and bent by enemies until it no longer matched reality. From Troy's wooden horse to Constantine's parchment to Napoleon's height, the pattern is clear. Lies thrive when people wish to believe them. And now we turn to another tale, one born in fear, fire, and whispers. The Witch Trials of Salem, where lies condemned the innocent to flames. In 17th century Salem, fear moved like smoke through the air. Small towns lived close to the wilderness, where every shadow seemed alive, and every sickness felt like a curse. People whispered of witches hiding among them. Neighbors, friends, even family members. A wrong look, A sudden illness or an unexplained event could spark suspicion. Fear turned simple accidents into signs of dark magic. It was a time when belief was stronger than proof. Children claimed to see visions, women screamed of spirits, and judges listened. In the wooden meeting houses of Salem, whispers became accusations. Soon the town was divided, each person watching the other with uneasy eyes. What began as rumors grew into trials, and what began as trials grew into fire. One by one, the names of the accused grew. A neighbor's quarrel, a child's cry, a sudden misfortune, all could be twisted into evidence. People pointed fingers not because of truth, but because of fear, jealousy, or revenge. Old grudges resurfaced under the mask of holy justice. A single word, witch, was enough to end a life. The trials grew darker. Women stood trembling in court while children shouted that they saw demons behind them. Men swore they felt the devil's breath in the room. Judges, carried by belief, ruled with severity. The more people confessed or accused, the more the fire spread. Salem became a place where lies were stronger than facts and fear stronger than reason. The prisons filled with men and women whose only crime was to be accused. Chains rattled in the cold, damp cells as they waited for judgment. Outside, the town prayed loudly, believing they were saving their souls by condemning their neighbors. Each trial added fuel to the fire. Each death added weight to the lie. Fear had become law, and lies had become justice. The accused begged for reason, but reason had no voice. In Salem, the word of a frightened child was stronger than truth. The lie was a storm, sweeping through homes and families, leaving only silence and sorrow. And yet, in the stillness of those nights, some must have wondered, how could a lie burn brighter than truth? In the heart of Salem, fear turned into flames. Trials ended with sentences, and sentences ended with rope or fire. Innocent men and women were dragged to the gallows, their cries swallowed by the shouts of the crowd. The air was thick with smoke, ash, and prayer. For those watching, the punishments seemed righteous, a cleansing of evil. But in truth, it was the lie itself that burned the brightest. The flames reached beyond the victims. Families were broken, friendships destroyed, and trust vanished. A single accusation could tear lives apart. People confessed to crimes they never committed, hoping for mercy, but mercy was scarce. The lie of witchcraft consumed the town until it was left scarred, hollow, and haunted. Salem became a warning to the world. When fear is fed by lies, even the innocent are not safe. When the trials ended, Salem was left in silence. The fire had gone out, but its shadow remained. Innocent lives were lost, reputations destroyed, and truth buried under ashes. The witch panic showed how fragile reason can be when lies are given power. Centuries later, the story of Salem is still told, not as proof of witches, but as proof of how far fear can lead when guided by falsehoods. If this journey into Salem's dark history has moved you, subscribe to our channel. It helps us keep uncovering stories where myth and truth meet. And now, let us leave the fires of Salem and step into another world of legend. For across the seas, warriors wore horns upon their helmets, or so we are told. But was it ever true, or just another lie dressed in iron? When people today imagine Vikings, they often see tall warriors with horned helmets, shouting as they charge into battle. This image is painted on posters, carved into statues, and shown in films. It feels so real that many believe it must be true. Yet history tells a different story. Real Viking helmets found by archaeologists are simple, rounded, and without horns. The horns were never part of their armor. So, how did the myth begin? The story of horned helmets was born much later in the 19th century. Artists and costume makers wanted to make the Vikings appear more dramatic. They gave them horns to make them look wild, barbaric, and terrifying. Operas like Wagner's Ring Cycle cemented the image, and soon it spread everywhere. A lie dressed in iron became stronger than fact. The helmets that Vikings truly wore were made for survival, not for show. Rounded iron caps, sometimes with nose guards, protected them in battle. Archaeological finds show no horns, no decorations, only practical designs. A horn on a helmet would have been dangerous. It could be grabbed by an enemy or catch a blow. The Vikings were warriors, sailors, and farmers, but they were not foolish. They built what worked, not what looked dramatic. Still, the truth was less exciting to storytellers. A simple round helmet did not inspire fear or wonder. It did not look majestic on stage or in paintings. So, artists added horns, and the world accepted them. What began as theater became history in the minds of millions. A simple costume became a lasting lie. By the time the 20th century arrived, the horned Viking was everywhere. Children's books showed them. Plays dressed actors in them, and movies made them larger than life. The horns became so tied to the Viking name that even now, centuries later, many cannot imagine them without it. A costume created for art had become culture. But the truth remained, quiet in museums, waiting to be noticed. Every helmet unearthed told the same story. The Vikings wore no horns. The real warriors did not need them. Their strength was in their ships, their weapons, their daring journeys across seas. The lie, however, had its own kind of strength. It showed how easily history can be rewritten by imagination. The real Vikings did not need horns to inspire fear. Their ships cut across icy seas, carrying warriors who braved storms and distant lands. They raided, traded, and settled, leaving marks on history from England to Russia. Their helmets were plain, but their deeds were mighty. To imagine them as horned caricatures is to miss the truth of their strength. They were explorers, builders, and fighters, men and women who shaped the world around them. The myth of horns made them look savage, but the truth made them human. They laughed, they sang, they carved runes into wood and stone. They believed in gods, in fate, and in honor. Their lives were harder and deeper than the costume we give them. And so, the lie of horned helmets hides something greater. The spirit of real Vikings, whose courage needs no decoration. Even today, horned helmets appear in festivals, sports teams, and costumes. The lie has lived so long that it has become a symbol, stronger than the truth itself. This shows how myths can reshape memory until fact is forgotten. The Vikings never wore horns, yet in the minds of many they always will. But this is only one mask that history wears. In another land, under a burning sun, myths grew taller than stone. For centuries, people believed slaves built the pyramids of Egypt, sweating under the whips of masters. But was that truth? or another lie that the world just accepted? For centuries, the story of the pyramids was painted in chains. Long lines of men under the burning sun, whipped and forced to drag massive stones across endless sand. This vision came from the ancient historian Herodotus, who wrote in the 5th century before Christ that forced labor built the pyramids. His words shaped the first image of slaves raising stone to the sky. Yet archaeology tells another story. The picture of chains was only one voice, not the truth of the desert. What Herodotus wrote was repeated for centuries, until it became legend. But beneath the sand, evidence waited to speak. Evidence of workers who were not enslaved, but honored. In the 1990s, archaeologists uncovered workers' villages near the Great Pyramids of Giza. There were bakeries with ovens for bread, jars for beer, and even small homes where families lived. Graves were found with respect. People buried with care, given offerings for the afterlife. These were not slaves forgotten in chains, but laborers remembered in stone. They were organized into teams, each with a name full of pride, such as the Friends of Khufu. They worked in shifts, building for months, then returning to their farms. They were fed, housed, and honored. Far from the image of cruelty, these findings revealed a community and cooperation. The pyramids were monuments not of suffering, but of ambition and unity. So why did the myth of slavery endure for so long? Partly because Herodotus's words were copied and retold. Later, other writers repeated the idea, and in modern times, the story fit too easily into what people expected of ancient kings: whips, chains, and cruelty. It was simple to imagine, and so the myth survived. Even Hollywood helped to keep the falsehood alive. Films showed endless chains of slaves in the desert, dragging stones to cruel overseers. These images were dramatic, powerful, and memorable. And so the lie became the common memory, stronger than the quiet truths buried in the sand. The discoveries of modern archaeology gave the workers back their names, their homes, and their dignity. The men and women who built the pyramids were skilled laborers, not nameless slaves. Their graves contained food, charms, and respect. They were remembered as people of importance, not forgotten as shadows. The pyramids stand as proof of human ambition and cooperation. Teams competed, carved playful marks on stones, and carried pride in their labor. This makes the pyramids not monuments of oppression, but monuments of community. The myth of slavery was strong, but the truth reveals something greater: unity carved into stone. The myth of slave-built pyramids shows how stories can last longer than facts. Herodotus's words echoed for thousands of years, shaping memory. But modern archaeology gave us a clearer voice, one that shows respect, not chains. The pyramids shine not only as wonders of stone, but as proof that history must always be questioned. And so, from the sands of Egypt, we turn to another shadowed tale, not carved in stone, but written in ink. A forgery that claimed to reveal secret plans for power, yet carried only lies. Next, we face the protocols of the Elders of Zion, one of history's darkest deceptions. At the dawn of the 20th century, a book began to appear. It claimed to reveal secret plans of a hidden council, guiding the world from the shadows. It was called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Many believed it, thinking they had found proof of secret plots. Yet in truth, it was nothing but a forgery, a carefully crafted lie written to deceive and divide. The book was not ancient nor holy. It was created in Russia, made from stolen fragments of political satire, twisted into something dark. Its purpose was not knowledge. It was hate. It was an antisemitic text, blaming Jewish people for problems they had not caused. There were no elders, no protocols, no secret council. But the lie looked real enough to poison minds. The forgery traveled across Europe. It was translated into many languages, whispered in cafes, read in parliaments, printed in newspapers. Each copy carried the same false message, that Jewish people were plotting to control the world. For those living in fear, poverty, and confusion, it gave an easy target to blame. That is why the lie spread so quickly. It was simple, and it fed on prejudice. But its simplicity was deadly. The protocols gave fuel to antisemitism, turning suspicion into hatred. It offered words that sounded powerful, but they were hollow and false. Still, the damage was real. Communities were attacked, trust was broken, and entire peoples were marked as enemies because of a book that was never true. Even while it spread, many stood against the forgery. Journalists showed that it had been copied from older texts. Scholars proved it was false. Governments declared it a fraud. The evidence was clear. The protocols were not history, but invention. Yet belief was louder than proof. Once fear has taken root, truth must fight to be heard. This is the strange power of lies. They can be exposed again and again, and still they live on. For those who wanted someone to blame, the protocols offered an easy answer. And so the anti-Semitic forgery survived, reborn in each generation that chose to believe it. The danger of the protocols was not in its ink, but in the harm it inspired. Across nations, Jewish people suffered because of its lies. Leaders quoted it, speeches spread it, mobs justified violence with it. A forgery became a weapon, used to turn neighbor against neighbor and to cover cruelty with the mask of false truth. The protocols remind us that lies are never harmless. When believed, they can destroy lives. This one text, proven false again and again, helped pave the way for real suffering. It shows how dangerous words can be when they are written with hatred at their core. By the time the protocols were revealed as a fraud, the damage was already done. Its poison had traveled too far, planted too deeply in minds and hearts. Even with proof of its forgery, some still clung to it, unwilling to let go of the lie. This is how hate works. When a story feels simple, it can be stronger than truth. And so, from this dark book, we turn to the final reflection. From wooden horses to witch trials, from horned helmets to pyramids, the pattern is the same. Lies may travel far, but truth endures. As we move into the end, let us remember that falsehoods can harm. But truth, though quieter, always waits. Throughout history, lies have walked beside truth, sometimes louder, sometimes longer. From Troy's wooden horse to Salem's whispers, from pyramids to protocols, each falsehood shaped the world in ways more lasting than fact. Myths gave meaning, even when wrong. Lies gave comfort, even when dangerous. Humanity has always carried both, the desire for truth and the hunger for stories that feel true. These stories show us how fragile memory can be. What we believe is not always what was. But lies reveal something deeper about us. They show what people feared, what they hoped, what they longed to explain. Every falsehood is a shadow of human desire, and in those shadows, history often lingers. A lie can live longer than the people who told it. Napoleon's height, Viking horns, the wall and the stars, none were true, yet they became legend. Children grew up hearing them. Artists painted them. Films replayed them. And so, lies became stronger than facts. But this is also the strange beauty of history. Legends tell us what people wanted to believe. They show us that truth alone does not guide memory. Emotion does. We remember what makes us laugh, fear, or wonder. The danger is when these legends are mistaken for fact. Then myths do not just entertain us, they mislead us. Yet, even as lies spread, truth waits patiently. Archaeology uncovers it, scholars write it, voices whisper it across time. The work of truth is slower, quieter, but no less powerful. Each myth unmasked leaves us with a clearer view of the past, a reminder that history is not fixed. It is discovered. If you've enjoyed this journey through shadows and stories, leave a comment below. Which of these myths surprised you most? Sharing your thoughts keeps history alive and helps truth find new voices. And as you drift into rest, remember, truth may be slow, but it never disappears. History is not only a chain of facts, it is also a river of stories. Some stories are true, others are false, yet all leave marks upon the world. The biggest lies in history remind us that belief is powerful. It can build empires, destroy lives, and shape a memory for centuries. But truth waits, steady as stone, patient as stars. As we end this journey, let us hold both lessons, the danger of lies and the quiet strength of truth. For in the end, truth does not shout, it endures. And as long as we search for it, history will not only tell us what was, but what it means to be human.